The wind howled across the snow-covered plains of Montana, rattling the windows of the Carter farmhouse. Inside, warm light spilled from the fireplace, flickering across a long oak dining table, dressed in red linens and candles. The smell of roast turkey filled the air, but the warmth in the room felt like a lie. Emily Carter sat at the far end of the table, hands clasped tight in her lap, 32 years old, tall, poised, chestnut hair pinned neatly in a bun. She wore a dark green sweater, elegant, city-like, a reminder she belonged somewhere else. Across from her sat Ryan Carter, 35, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, his plaid shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. That easy grin of his always won people over, especially their parents. Margaret Carter, silver-haired, proud, with pearl earrings glinting in the firelight, watched her son with motherly pride. John Carter, her husband, 60-something, weathered by decades of hard ranch work, leaned back in his chair, polishing his glasses. On the wall hung an old family photo, the Carters at the county fair, all smiles under a bright Montana sky. But tonight, no one was smiling. "Ryan's the reason this farm's still standing," Margaret said, her voice soft but full of pride. "We'd have lost everything if it weren't for his sacrifices." Emily's fork trembled. She'd heard that line 100 times, but tonight it cut deeper. Her throat tightened, because she knew the truth. She was the one who had been quietly sending money for months, paying off debts Ryan said were crushing them. And now, watching him smirk while soaking up their praise, she realized just how foolish her silence had been. John's deep voice cut through. "You always find a way to make things about you, Emily," he said sternly. "It's Christmas, don't start." Emily's chest burned. She'd worked long hours in Denver, saving every cent, while Ryan drank, gambled, and called it stress. Her lips parted. She couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Dad, Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been the one sending the money. Every month. From Denver. Those payments didn't come from Ryan." Silence. The only sound. The ticking clock on the mantel. John frowned deeply. "Don't start lying, Emily. Your brother's been here working his tail off, while you've been off living your city life." Ryan chuckled, that smug, easy laugh that had always gotten him out of trouble. "Sis, come on. It's Christmas. Don't ruin the night." Her breath caught. "You've been taking credit for what I did," she said sharply. "You begged me not to tell them, remember? Said it would hurt their pride." Margaret crossed her arms. "You always were dramatic, Emily. You could never stand your brother getting attention." Those words hit like ice water. Emily rose slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't believe me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You never do." Ryan leaned back in his chair, half smiling. "Then prove it." Something inside her snapped. Her voice turned calm, cold. "I will," she said. "Tomorrow. I'll go back to Denver and bring proof. You'll see who's been keeping this farm alive." Margaret sighed. "You're ruining Christmas." Emily turned toward the door, eyes glistening. "No," she said softly. "You already did that." The room fell silent again. Even the dog by the fire lifted its head. Emily grabbed her coat, stepped into the bitter wind. Snow swirled under the porch light, whispering her name like a warning. She glanced back through the frosted window. Ryan stood there, still smirking beside their parents. She started the car. The headlights cut through the falling snow. Each mile away from the farmhouse felt like a small release, like air finally entering lungs that had held too long. Her phone buzzed on the seat. A message from Ben Walker, her colleague and quiet confidant at the Denver law firm. "Merry Christmas, Em. You okay?" "Something feels off. Call me if you need to talk." Emily smiled faintly through the tears. Ben, 33, tall, calm-eyed, the kind of man who always listened before speaking, had a way of grounding her. She typed back, "Not okay, Ben. I'll explain later." Outside, the snow thickened, swallowing the highway into endless white. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was running from her family. She was driving toward the truth, and she wouldn't stop until they saw it. The road stretched endlessly through the white wilderness, a narrow ribbon of black cutting through frozen silence. Emily Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, her breath fogging the windshield despite the heater blasting. The radio whispered faint Christmas songs, but they only made the ache in her chest worse. Her eyes were red from crying. The farm lights had faded behind her an hour ago, replaced by a blur of snow and night. The words still echoed in her head. "You always make things about you, Emily." Her father's tone, her mother's disappointment, her brother's smug grin. They looped, over and over, like a cruel refrain. She pressed harder on the gas. "I'll prove it," she muttered to herself. "I'll show them all." By dawn, the car rolled into Denver, the city wrapped in pale morning fog. Emily's apartment was cold and quiet when she walked in, coat dusted with snow, hair damp from melted flakes. She tossed her keys on the counter and leaned against the wall, heart pounding with exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ben Walker again. "I made coffee. Come over if you need company." Emily hesitated, then grabbed her purse and left. Ben lived a few blocks away, a modest apartment overlooking the city's frozen skyline. He opened the door before she even knocked. Ben was 33, clean-shaven, tall, with kind gray-blue eyes and a soft flannel shirt that smelled faintly of cedar. His expression shifted when he saw her face, pale, tired, eyes swollen. "Emily," he said softly, "you look like you've been through hell." She exhaled shakily, stepping inside. "I guess you could say that." He poured her coffee, dark and strong, and handed it to her with both hands, the way he always did when words weren't enough. They sat at his small kitchen table, steam curling between them. "Was it your family?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded. "They think I lied. Ryan told them he's the one who sent money to save the farm. I showed nothing yet, but they laughed at me, Ben. My own parents." Ben leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You have proof, though, right? Bank records, transfers?" "I do," she said, voice trembling. "I made deposits at the Denver branch every month since July. I'll get the receipts as soon as the bank reopens." Ben nodded slowly. "Then you'll go back?" Emily stared at the window, snow drifting past the glass. "I have to. They won't believe me otherwise." He studied her in silence, the quiet kind of concern that needed no words. "Emily," he said finally, his voice low, "you've spent years trying to earn their respect. Maybe it's not about proving it to them anymore. Maybe it's about proving it to yourself." She looked up sharply, tears welling again. "But they're my parents, Ben. I can't just walk away." He gave a half smile. "Maybe not. But you can stop letting them decide who you are." Later that night, sleep refused to come. Emily sat by her apartment window, city lights glowing below. She thought of the farm, the sound of the windmill, the smell of hay, the creak of the old barn door. And beneath it all, her brother's laughter, echoing like a ghost. By morning, she was at the Denver branch of the Montana State Bank, coat buttoned up tight, snow melting off her boots as she stepped inside. A friendly teller, a middle-aged man named Mr. Harris, with glasses and a neat gray mustache, greeted her. "Good morning, miss. How can I help you?" Emily straightened her shoulders. "I need copies of all deposits made into the Carter Farm account from July to December. My name's Emily Carter. I made those deposits myself. Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses and nodded. Of course. Give me just a moment. He disappeared into the back, the faint whir of a machine echoing from behind the counter. Minutes later, he returned with a stack of printed receipts, each stamped with her name, the date, and the exact amount. He slid them across the counter carefully. Here you go, Miss Carter. Every transaction's right there. Emily stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. Her name in black, ink, her effort made real. Proof, undeniable, unarguable. Thank you, she whispered. He smiled. Glad to help. Merry Christmas, by the way. She gave a small, tired smile back. Yeah, you too. Driving home, she kept glancing at the passenger seat, the receipts neatly stacked under a small paperweight she'd grabbed from her desk. Each mile she drove, her resolve grew stronger. She could already imagine Ryan's face when she laid those papers on the table. But under her determination, something deeper stirred. Sorrow and exhaustion. Because even with proof, she wasn't sure it would change their hearts. Still, she had to try. Her phone buzzed again. Ben's message lit up the screen. Whatever happens, I've got your back. Always. She smiled faintly. Maybe, for the first time, she wasn't fighting this alone. The sky above Denver turned gold as the storm clouds thinned. Emily drove on, sunlight cutting through the snow like a promise. A promise. That truth, no matter how buried, always finds its way home. Snow still blanketed the Montana hills. By the time Emily's car turned onto the long gravel road leading to the Carter farmhouse, the tires crunched through frost, echoing in the cold air. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from something deeper. The need to finally be heard. She parked near the barn, the engine idling softly before she shut it off. The world went silent, just the faint whistle of wind brushing through the pines. In the passenger seat, a neat stack of papers sat under a glass paperweight. Her proof. Months of sacrifice, now compressed into ink and numbers. She took a deep breath, grabbed the stack, and stepped into the snow. The wind bit at her cheeks, but she barely felt it. This was it. Inside the farmhouse, the same yellow glow of lamplight spilled across the kitchen. Margaret stood at the stove stirring a pot of stew, humming softly, as if nothing had ever happened. John sat at the table, glasses perched on his nose, reading the newspaper. And Ryan was leaning against the counter, an apple in hand, looking like a man with no care in the world. When the door opened, the room fell still. Emily's boots thudded softly against the wooden floor. Her hair was damp from the snow, her coat dusted white. No one spoke. Then she walked straight to the table and dropped the stack of receipts in front of her father. They hit the surface with a sharp slap. There, she said quietly. Every deposit I've made since July. My name, my signature, my money. John looked up from his paper, frowning. What is this supposed to be? Proof, she replied. Proof that I wasn't lying, that I'm the one who's been keeping this farm alive. Margaret turned from the stove, wiping her hands on her apron, her brows furrowed. Emily, honestly, what's the point of this? The point, Emily said, her voice rising just slightly, is that you called me a liar. She pointed toward Ryan. And he let you. Ryan raised a brow, still chewing his apple. I don't know what you're talking about, sis. You know exactly what I'm talking about, she snapped, slamming her hand on the table. Every one of those deposits came from my account in Denver. You told me to stay quiet, remember? Said it would hurt their pride. John sighed, lowering his glasses. Emily, this is getting out of hand. Margaret crossed her arms. You forged this, didn't you? Emily's breath caught, the words slicing deep. Forged it? You think I'd fake this? She gestured to the papers. "Call the bank. Ask for Mr. Harris at the Denver branch. He'll tell you himself." But they didn't move. They didn't even look at the papers again. Instead, Margaret turned to Ryan, not to her daughter. "Ryan," she asked softly, "is there any truth to this?" Ryan shrugged. "Mom, you really think I'd let her send money for me?" He gave a small laugh. "She's always had a flair for drama." Emily stared at him in disbelief, her brother, her own blood, lying effortlessly, like it was nothing. "You coward," she whispered. "You stood there while I took the blame, and you call me dramatic?" Ryan's smirk didn't fade. "Look, Emily, I get it. You wanted to help. But we both know this isn't about money. It's about attention. It's always been that way." The room spun slightly. Her heart was hammering now. Part rage, part heartbreak. John pushed the papers aside. "Enough. You've made your point. Let's not ruin another day." Another day. Another dismissal. Something inside Emily shattered. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "You'll regret this," she said slowly, "because one day you'll see exactly what kind of man you've been protecting." No one replied. Even the ticking clock seemed to hesitate. Emily turned, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the door. Ryan's voice followed her like a sneer. "Don't be so dramatic, sis." She stopped for just a second, long enough to say, without looking back, "I'm done." Then she stepped outside. The cold hit her like freedom. That night, back in Denver, Emily sat on her couch, staring at the receipts still spread across her coffee table. She'd thought proving the truth would feel like victory, but it didn't. It felt hollow. She picked up her phone, a new message from Ben. "You okay?" Emily typed slowly. "They didn't believe me, not even with proof." Then paused, deleted it, typed again. "I'll be fine." She wasn't fine, but she would be, because some truths aren't meant to convince others. They're meant to free you. 6 months passed since Emily had driven away from that frozen Montana farmhouse. 6 long, quiet months. Winter melted into spring, and spring gave way to the warmth of summer. But inside her heart, there was still frost. Life in Denver had moved on. Emily poured herself into her work at the law firm, long hours, endless files, courtroom arguments that kept her mind too busy to feel. At night, she volunteered with Ben Walker, helping struggling farmers navigate debt and foreclosure. It was her way of turning pain into purpose. Ben noticed how she threw herself into every case, every cause. Sometimes, late at night, he'd bring her tea instead of coffee, telling her gently, "You don't have to carry the whole world to prove your worth, Em." And she'd smile faintly, but never answer. Because deep down, she still thought of her father's voice. "Don't start lying, Emily. Some wounds don't bleed. They echo." One humid July afternoon, she came home from court, exhausted. The sun was low, spilling golden light across her apartment floor. She kicked off her heels, loosened her hair, and for the first time in weeks, allowed herself to breathe. Then, a knock. 3 soft taps at the door. She froze. Her friends always texted first. Her neighbors didn't visit. She opened the door. And there they were. John and Margaret Carter, her parents. Her father looked smaller somehow. His shoulders slumped, his hands nervously gripping the brim of his hat. Margaret's hair had more silver in it now, her eyes rimmed red like she'd been crying for days. They stood there awkwardly in the hallway, surrounded by city noise that didn't belong to them. "Emily," her father said quietly, "can we come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. They entered slowly, looking around the modest apartment, so different from the farmhouse. Her mother clutched her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. John sat at the edge of the couch, hat still in hand. Emily stayed standing. "What do you want?" she asked flatly. John took a deep breath. "We owe you an apology. A big one." Those words hung in the air like something fragile. Margaret's voice trembled. "We were wrong, Emily. We didn't believe you when you tried to tell us the truth. And we should have. We should have listened." Emily folded her arms, saying nothing. Her father looked down at his weathered hands. "After you left, things fell apart fast. Bills piled up. The crops failed. Equipment broke. Ryan said he'd handle it, but he didn't, not even close." Margaret's lip quivered. He finally told us everything, that it was you, that you were the one sending the money all along." Tears welled in her eyes. "You saved that farm, Emily, and we called you a liar." The words struck something deep, a wound reopening, but this time with light instead of pain. Emily swallowed hard. Her mother reached out tentatively. "We're so sorry, sweetheart, for not believing you, for treating you the way we did." John nodded slowly. "You didn't deserve any of it." For a long moment, the apartment was silent. Emily stared at them both, unsure what to say. Part of her wanted to forgive them right there. Part of her wanted to make them sit in their guilt just a little longer. Finally, she spoke, voice low, steady. "Where's Ryan?" Margaret exchanged a glance with John. "He's still at the farm," she said softly. "He wanted to come, but we thought maybe we should talk to you first." Emily's brow furrowed. "Of course you did," she said bitterly, still protecting him. Her father winced. "No, Emily, we didn't want to overwhelm you." She let out a small, humorless laugh. "Overwhelm me? After everything you said, after everything he did, you think that's what I'm afraid of?" Margaret's voice broke. "We just wanted to make things right." Emily's tone softened, but the edge remained. "You can't make it right with apologies, Mom. You believed a lie because it was easier than believing me." Her father's eyes glistened for the first time. "You're right." He stood slowly, the years heavy in his movement. "We can't fix what we did, but we came here to say it, to your face. We're sorry, truly sorry." Emily exhaled shakily. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something. They stood there for a long time, three figures in the golden light of a quiet Denver apartment. No accusations left, just the heavy stillness of truth, finally spoken aloud. When they left, John turned at the door, hat in hand. "You were right all along, Emily, and we see that now." Then they were gone. The door clicked shut. And for the first time in her life, Emily Carter felt seen. A week later, Denver felt quieter than usual. Summer sunlight poured through Emily's window, warm and golden, settling on the coffee table where the old bank receipt still sat. Reminders of a battle finally won. But her heart wasn't done healing. She hadn't heard from her parents since that visit. They'd left a message saying the farm was still struggling, but that Ryan had started working again. Really working this time. Emily wasn't sure how to feel about that. Relief, maybe, or exhaustion. Then, another knock. 3 slow raps on the door. Her pulse quickened. When she opened it, there he was, Ryan Carter, her brother. He looked older, his tan faded, his face drawn and tired. No more smug grin, just a man, hollowed out by guilt. He stood with his hands buried in his jacket pockets, shoulders hunched like the weight of winter still clung to him. "Hey, Em," he said softly. His voice, quieter than she'd ever heard it. "Can I come in?" Emily hesitated. The instinct to slam the door flickered through her mind, but she stepped aside. 5 minutes, she said flatly. He nodded once, stepping in like someone entering a church. He didn't sit. He just stood there, shifting from one foot to the other, eyes flicking everywhere but hers. "I came to apologize," he said finally, voice cracking. "For everything." Emily crossed her arms. "Everything's a big word, Ryan. Be specific." He swallowed hard. "For lying, for taking credit for the money, for letting Mom and Dad believe you were the problem when it was me." Her chest tightened, but she said nothing. He went on, words tumbling out now. "I was jealous of you, Emily. Always have been. You got out, made something of yourself. And I stayed behind, trying to prove I mattered." His voice shook. "Every time Mom and Dad compared us, I hated how small that made me feel. I thought, if I could keep the farm running, I'd finally be enough. But I wasn't. Not without you." Emily looked at him. Really looked at him. The man standing before her wasn't the arrogant brother she remembered. He was broken. Humbled. A boy who'd finally faced the truth of himself. He pressed a trembling hand to his face. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he whispered. "I just needed you to know. I'm sorry." Then his shoulders began to shake, and before she could stop herself, Emily reached out, instinct, not thought, and placed a hand on his arm. He broke down completely, tears spilling, his voice muffled in shame. For a moment neither of them spoke, just the sound of quiet sobs and the faint hum of the city beyond the window. When Ryan finally looked up, his eyes were raw. "I miss having a sister," he said simply. Emily exhaled, a tear slipping down her own cheek. "You still have one," she whispered, "but this time you have to earn it." Ryan nodded slowly, no excuses, no arguments, just acceptance. Weeks later, Emily stood on the same dirt road she'd once driven away from. The Carter farmhouse stood in the distance, weathered but alive. A few local workers loaded crates of produce into a truck marked Carter Family Green Farm, organic and local. The transformation was quiet but powerful. Ryan approached, wiping sweat from his brow. He wore a clean denim shirt now, sleeves rolled, a calm focus in his eyes. "Looks good, huh?" he said with a small, hopeful smile. Emily nodded. "It does." She looked around, the fields stretching green and full, the land that had once divided them, now bringing them together again. Behind them, their parents stood on the porch, Margaret waving, John giving a small nod of approval. Not perfect, not fixed, but healing. Ben's voice echoed in Emily's mind. "You don't have to carry the world to prove your worth." She smiled faintly. He was right. Now the farm would survive, not because of pride or competition, but because of truth and teamwork and forgiveness. As the sun dipped low, painting the fields gold, Ryan turned to his sister. "Thanks for giving me another chance." Emily met his gaze. "Just don't waste it," she said softly. Then, after a pause, she added, "Welcome home, Ryan." The two of them stood in silence, watching the horizon fade into the warm glow of evening. No more lies, no more blame, just the quiet peace of a family learning to love honestly again. And for the first time, Emily Carter felt truly home.